My 5-year-old daughter, Lucy, stared at the empty chairs around her birthday table, her bottom lip trembling as she asked the question that shattered my world. "Daddy, why didn't Grandma and Grandpa come to my party?" I had been paying my parents $900 every single week for 2 years, thinking I was helping them through hard times. With shaking hands, I dialed my father's number, expecting an explanation, maybe an emergency that kept them away. Instead, his voice cut through the phone like a blade of ice. "Your child means nothing to us, Finn." "Nothing at all." The line went dead and I stood there trembling, staring at my phone, realizing that everything I believed about family loyalty had been built on lies and my own desperate need to be loved. The weekly payments began on a rainy Tuesday morning 2 years ago when my mother, Patricia, called me sobbing. My father, Harold, had supposedly lost his construction job after injuring his back lifting heavy materials. Through her tears, she painted a picture of financial devastation that made my chest tighten with panic. Their mortgage was 3 months behind, utilities were getting shut off, and they barely had food in the refrigerator. I was 26 then, working as a software engineer for a tech company in Austin, earning good money designing database systems. Without hesitation, I offered $400 weekly to help them stay afloat. Patricia's grateful tears over the phone made me feel like a hero, a son who could rescue his struggling parents when they needed him most. But $400 wasn't enough. A month later, Harold called explaining unexpected medical bills from his back injury. The insurance company was fighting the claim and they owed thousands to specialists and physical therapists. I increased my contribution to $600 weekly, transferring money every Friday without fail. Then came the property taxes, supposedly doubled by the county assessor. Patricia called crying again, explaining they might lose the house their grandfather built with his own hands. The emotional weight of potentially losing family history pushed me to increase payments to $700, then $800, and finally $900 every single week. Over 2 years, I calculated that I had sent them more than $93,600, nearly $100,000 of my hard-earned money given freely because I loved them and believed they were drowning. Lucy's 6th birthday party was supposed to be magical. She had spent weeks crafting handmade invitations decorated with purple glitter hearts, specifically requesting that Grandma and Grandpa Harold attend her unicorn-themed celebration. I had reminded my parents multiple times, even offering to cover their gas money and grocery shopping for the week if finances were particularly tight. The morning of the party, I called to confirm their arrival time. Harold answered with an irritated tone, claiming they might be running late due to some unspecified errands. I offered to delay the party start time, but he brushed off my concern with vague promises about doing their best to make it. 3 hours into the celebration, with Lucy repeatedly checking the driveway for their car, I called again. This time, Harold's voice carried a coldness I had never heard before. When I asked where they were and why they hadn't shown up for their granddaughter's birthday, his response froze my blood. "Your child means nothing to us, Finn. Nothing at all." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, holding the silent phone, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Lucy's laughter echoed from the living room, where her friends played party games, completely unaware that her grandparents had just declared her worthless. Unable to process what had just happened, I drove to their house an hour after the party ended. Sarah stayed home to clean up, sensing that something terrible had occurred, but not understanding the magnitude of the betrayal I was beginning to suspect. Their neighborhood looked different somehow, as if I was seeing it clearly for the first time. In the driveway sat a gleaming new motorcycle I had never seen before. A beautiful blue Harley-Davidson that must have cost $15,000. Expensive outdoor furniture adorned their front porch, including a matching table and chair set with decorative umbrellas. Mrs. Sullivan, their next-door neighbor of 20 years, approached me with a friendly smile as I stood staring at the motorcycle. Her casual conversation revealed information that made my stomach drop like a stone. "Isn't that bike gorgeous?" she said, gesturing toward the Harley. "Derek sure knows how to pick them. Your parents are so generous taking him on those weekend trips to Atlantic City. Just last weekend, they were loading up the car with luggage, talking about hitting the casinos, and trying that new seafood buffet everyone's raving about." Derek. My younger brother Derek, who supposedly lived 2 states away struggling with his own financial problems. The same Derek who never called, never visited, and never contributed a single dollar toward our parents' alleged crisis. Mrs. Sullivan continued chatting, mentioning how nice it had been seeing Derek around so much lately, and how Harold had been bragging about Derek's new business ventures. The pieces of a horrifying puzzle began forming in my mind as I realized my parents had been using my money to fund my brother's lifestyle, while treating my daughter like she didn't exist. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia. "Sorry we missed Lucy's party. Something came up. We'll make it up to her soon." Something came up. 2 years of my financial support and my daughter's 6th birthday party qualified as something that just came up. That night, I began investigating the lies my parents had built around my generosity, completely unprepared for how deep their betrayal actually went. Sleep became impossible that night. I sat at my computer until dawn, conducting my own investigation into the family that had been systematically lying to me for 2 years. What I discovered made me question everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. The first call I made was to Harrison Construction, the company where my father supposedly lost his job due to a back injury. After being transferred to 3 different supervisors, I finally reached someone willing to discuss Harold's employment record. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Harold had never lost his job due to injury. He had quit voluntarily after working there for 8 months, claiming he wanted to pursue other opportunities. The supervisor remembered Harold specifically because he had turned down a promotion to crew chief just 2 weeks before quitting. There was no back injury, no workers' compensation claim, no medical emergency that destroyed his earning capacity. My hands shook as I dialed the Austin Public Library, where my mother worked part-time. The head librarian confirmed that Patricia had never stopped working. She was currently scheduled for 25 hours weekly, earning $16 per hour, and had recently received a small raise for excellent performance. She had never mentioned financial struggles to her co-workers and had even contributed to the office holiday party fund last month. The library revelation led me to examine public records through the county clerk's website. Property tax records showed that my parents had actually refinanced their house 18 months ago, taking out significant equity in a cash-out refinancing deal. Instead of preventing foreclosure, they had extracted $48,000 from their home's value and used it for renovations. Building permits revealed the scope of their home improvements. They had installed a brand new kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. The bathroom had been completely remodeled with a walk-in shower and heated floors. None of these improvements suggested people struggling to keep their utilities connected. Through our shared financial advisor, someone we had all used for years to manage investments and insurance policies, I gained access to some of their banking information. What I found made me physically nauseous. Their checking account showed regular deposits that perfectly corresponded with my weekly $900 transfers, followed immediately by large cash withdrawals and transfers to Derek's accounts. The pattern was undeniable. Every Friday, my $900 would appear in their account. By Monday, most of it had been withdrawn in cash or transferred to Derek through various payment apps. Receipts and transaction records showed the money funding Derek's gambling habits, expensive dinners, sporting event tickets, and luxury purchases. But the most devastating discovery came through Derek's careless social media presence. His Facebook and Instagram accounts, which I had never bothered checking before, were filled with photos documenting a lifestyle of leisure and excess that my money had funded. Pictures showed Derek at expensive steakhouses with $40 entrees, posing with Harold and Patricia, at sporting events with premium seating, and displaying purchases like designer clothing and electronic gadgets. One particularly painful photo showed all three of them at a casino in Las Vegas, smiling and holding cocktails in front of slot machines, with Derek's caption reading, "Best parents ever, always supporting their successful son." The timestamp on the Vegas photo corresponded exactly with a week when Patricia had called me crying about not being able to afford Derek's birthday gift, asking if I could send an extra $200 to help them show him they cared. I scrolled through months of Derek's posts, finding a detailed record of the luxurious lifestyle my parents had been funding while claiming poverty. Golf outings, concert tickets, weekend trips to expensive resorts, shopping sprees at high-end electronics stores. Every experience that my weekly payments had purchased for Derek, while my own daughter was told her grandparents were too poor to visit her. The cruelest revelation came through Derek's older posts, dating back to before I started sending money. The photos from 3 years ago showed Derek living modestly, working at various temporary jobs, and spending time with a different group of friends. The transformation coincided perfectly with when I began supporting my parents financially. As I dug deeper into their deception, I realized the manipulation had been far more sophisticated than simple lies about money. Every holiday gathering, every family dinner, every supposedly casual conversation had been carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion of Derek's success and my parents' struggles. When Derek achieved small accomplishments like completing a certification course or getting a temporary job, Harold and Patricia celebrated, enthusiastically praising his ambition and entrepreneurial spirit. When I received promotions at work or completed challenging projects, their responses were tepid and brief, often followed by comments about how lucky I was to have such a stable but boring career. They had systematically trained me to feel guilty about my success while portraying Derek as the son who deserved their pride and support. Every family interaction had been designed to extract money from me while showering Derek with the attention and approval I desperately wanted from my parents. The psychological manipulation became clear as I reviewed years of conversations and interactions. My parents had exploited my love for them and my desire to be a good son, turning those virtues into weapons against my financial security and emotional well-being. But understanding the scope of their betrayal was only the beginning. As I prepared to confront them with evidence, I had no idea how much worse the situation would become when they realized their lies were falling apart. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I drove to my parents' house with a folder full of printed evidence. Bank statements, employment verification, social media screenshots, and public records filled the manila envelope sitting on my passenger seat like ammunition for a war I had never wanted to fight. Harold answered the door, wearing a defensive expression before I even spoke. His greeting carried an edge of annoyance, as if my unannounced visit was an unwelcome intrusion rather than a son coming to visit his parents. "What brings you by, Finn? We weren't expecting company today." I held up the folder without speaking, and something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe fear, but certainly not surprise. He had been expecting this confrontation eventually. Patricia appeared behind him, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. Her smile faltered when she saw my expression and the evidence I carried. Instead of inviting me inside, they both remained blocking the doorway, as if protecting their home from an invasion. "We need to talk," I said, simply opening the folder to reveal the bank statements on top. "I know about Derek's lifestyle, the refinancing your jobs, everything." Harold's reaction shocked me more than his anger could have. He laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor or warmth. "So what, Finn? So what if we helped Derek out a little? He's our son too. And unlike some people, he actually appreciates what we do for him." Patricia stepped forward, and her transformation was immediate and chilling. The tearful, grateful mother who had sobbed over the phone about utility bills disappeared completely. In her place stood a woman whose eyes held calculation and contempt. "You want to know the truth?" she said, crossing her arms. "Derek is going through a rough patch with his business ventures, and we chose to support him. You make plenty of money with your fancy computer job. What's $900 to someone like you? You probably spend more than that on coffee and lunch every month. The casual dismissal of nearly $100,000 as insignificant coffee money revealed how completely they had redefined reality to justify their theft. But worse was coming. Derek emerged from the kitchen, and his presence explained why my parents had been blocking the doorway. He had been living there rent-free while my money paid for his room and board. His smirk when he saw me holding evidence told me everything I needed to know about his role in the deception. Well, Derek said, settling into a chair with the casual confidence of someone completely comfortable in their surroundings. Big brother finally figured it out. Took you long enough, honestly. Mom and Dad have been telling me for months how gullible you are sending money without ever checking where it actually goes. The deliberate cruelty in his tone was designed to hurt, and it succeeded. But his next words revealed the depth of their coordinated manipulation. You know what the funny part is, Finn? They've always loved me more than you. Even when we were kids, you were the boring one who followed rules and got good grades. I was the one with personality, the one they actually enjoyed spending time with. You just happened to make more money, so you became useful. Harold nodded approvingly at Derek's speech, as if he was proud of his younger son's ability to articulate their family hierarchy. Derek's right, Finn. You've always been uptight and boring, even as a kid. Derek knows how to have fun, how to live life instead of just working all the time like some kind of robot. The systematic destruction of my sense of family belonging was intentional and thorough, but they were not finished devastating me yet. Patricia pulled out her phone and began scrolling through messages. Since you want honesty, Finn let me share some more truth with you. We've been telling the family about your selfishness for months now. Aunt Martha knows how you've become too good for us since getting your fancy job. Uncle Bob understands why we can't rely on you for anything meaningful. Cousin Jennifer has heard all about how you think you're better than the rest of us. My phone began buzzing with incoming text messages. Aunt Martha had sent a long message expressing disappointment in my behavior toward my parents. Uncle Bob's text questioned why I had become so money-focused and cold toward family. Cousin Jennifer wondered if my job had changed me into someone who no longer valued family relationships. The coordination became clear. While extracting money from me, my parents had been systematically destroying my relationships with extended family by portraying me as selfish, arrogant, and financially obsessed. Every relative who mattered to me now believed a carefully crafted lie about my character. Harold stood up, pointing toward the door. Since you're so concerned about money and want to come here with your little investigation folder, you can forget about being welcome in this house anymore. We don't need your attitude or your accusations. Patricia added the final blow. We've already told everyone that you refuse to help your struggling parents, and that you've become too successful to care about family. They all understand what kind of person you really are now. Derek's laughter followed me as I walked back to my car, but the sound was drowned out by my phone continuing to buzz with messages from relatives expressing their disappointment in me. In one calculated confrontation, my parents had not only refused to acknowledge their theft, but had revealed months of character assassination designed to isolate me from everyone I loved. As I drove away, I realized that confronting them about the money had only been the beginning. They had declared war on my reputation, my relationships, and my place in the family. The fight was far from over, and I was completely unprepared for how much more devastation they were capable of inflicting. The phone call from Cousin Jennifer came Tuesday evening while I was helping Lucy with her homework. Jennifer's voice carried confusion and hurt as she asked questions that made my blood run cold. Finn, I need to understand something. Why won't you let Mom and Dad see Lucy? They've been heartbroken about it for months, and honestly, the whole family is pretty disappointed in how you've been handling this situation. I set down Lucy's coloring book and stepped into the kitchen, my heart pounding as Jennifer's words sank in. What are you talking about, Jennifer? What have my parents told you? Her sigh carried years of accumulated frustration. They've explained how you won't allow them to see Lucy unless they pay you money first. Harold told Uncle Bob that you demand payment for babysitting services and transportation costs every time they want to spend time with their granddaughter. It's been going on for months, Finn. We all understand they're struggling financially, but using Lucy as leverage seems really cruel. The manipulation was so complete and devastating that I had to sit down. My parents had not only stolen my money and destroyed my reputation, but they had weaponized my daughter, turning her into evidence of my supposed greed, while simultaneously preventing her from knowing her extended family. Jennifer continued, her voice growing more emotional. For Lucy's birthday, we all pitched in to help them afford whatever fees you were demanding. Aunt Martha organized a collection, and we raised $300 so they could attend their granddaughter's party. When they told us you rejected the partial payment and banned them from the party entirely, we were all horrified. My hands began shaking as the full scope of their cruelty became clear. They had taken money from struggling relatives under false pretenses, kept every dollar, and then used my alleged rejection of their payment as proof of my heartless character. The care packages, I whispered suddenly, understanding why Lucy had been asking about presents from family members. Jennifer, have you and others been sending Lucy gifts? Of course we have. Jennifer's voice rose with indignation. We've all been sending birthday cards, Christmas presents, Easter baskets, everything we could think of to maintain some connection with her. Your parents told us it was the only way to get anything to Lucy since you wouldn't allow direct contact. We've been routing everything through them for over a year. Lucy had been asking me repeatedly why Aunt Martha never sent birthday cards anymore, why Uncle Bob had stopped including her in his Christmas newsletter, why Cousin Jennifer never responded to the drawing Lucy had asked me to mail her. I had assumed everyone was just busy with their own lives, never imagining that my parents were intercepting every attempt at contact. The conversation with Jennifer opened floodgates of devastating revelations. Phone calls with Aunt Martha, Uncle Bob, and other relatives revealed the systematic campaign my parents had waged against my character, while positioning themselves as suffering grandparents desperate to maintain a relationship with their granddaughter. Aunt Martha had been setting aside $50 monthly for over 8 months, saving money to help pay whatever fees I allegedly demanded for Lucy to attend family gatherings. She had missed her own birthday dinner at a restaurant she loved, choosing instead to save that money for Lucy's benefit. Uncle Bob revealed that he had stopped visiting our area entirely because Harold had told him, I threatened to call police if family members showed up at my house unannounced. Bob had been driving a different route to avoid our neighborhood for 6 months, believing his presence might create legal problems for me. The cruelest revelation came from my elderly Aunt Grace, Harold's sister, who lived on a fixed income. She had been sending $25 monthly to Harold and Patricia, believing it would help them afford gas money to visit Lucy. Aunt Grace had been eating generic food and skipping her weekly coffee dates with friends to contribute to what she thought was Lucy's welfare. Each conversation revealed another layer of financial and emotional manipulation. My parents had extracted money from multiple family members by claiming I was blocking access to Lucy, then kept every dollar, while ensuring Lucy never received the love and attention her relatives wanted to give her. The most heartbreaking discovery involved Christmas presents. Lucy had specifically asked me last Christmas why Santa seemed to forget about presents from Grandma and Grandpa, aunts and uncles and cousins. I had gently explained that not everyone could afford presents, teaching her about gratitude and understanding. Jennifer's description of the elaborate Christmas packages that multiple relatives had sent through my parents made me realize Lucy had been taught that her extended family didn't care about her, while family members believed I was preventing their gifts from reaching her. Finn. Jennifer said near the end of our conversation, I need to ask you directly, have you really been demanding money for them to see Lucy? Because if you have, we all want to understand why. If you haven't, then we need to know that too. The question hung in the air like a judgment. My own cousin, someone who had known me my entire life, had been convinced that I was capable of using my child as a financial weapon against my struggling parents. Jennifer, I have never asked my parents for a single dollar. I've been sending them $900 every week for 2 years because they told me they were struggling. They skipped Lucy's birthday party completely, and when I called to ask why, my father told me that Lucy means nothing to them. The silence on Jennifer's end stretched for nearly 30 seconds before she spoke again. Her voice completely changed. "Oh my God, Finn, what have they done?" That question echoed in my mind as I hung up the phone and looked through the kitchen window at Lucy playing in our backyard. She had been isolated from her extended family based on lies designed to extract money from people who loved her, while convincing her that those same people had forgotten she existed. The depth of my parents' manipulation extended far beyond stealing money. They had stolen my daughter's sense of belonging in her extended family, while stealing money from that same family under the pretense of helping her. The cruelty was so comprehensive and calculated that I struggled to believe the people who raised me were capable of such systematic destruction. But I was about to discover that their manipulation reached even deeper into our lives, threatening not just our relationships, but our financial future and legal security. The credit monitoring alert arrived in my email Thursday morning while I was reviewing code at work. The message indicated that a new account had been opened using my social security number, triggering the fraud protection services I had maintained for years without ever needing them. My hands trembled as I logged into the credit reporting website and discovered an account I had never authorized. A credit card with an $8,000 limit had been opened 3 weeks earlier with a current balance of $6,400. The billing address listed my parents' house. I called the credit card company, immediately explaining that I had never applied for or authorized the account. The customer service representative transferred me to their fraud department, where a specialist named Marcus began reviewing the application details. "And, sir, I'm looking at the application documentation, and it appears to be quite thorough," Marcus explained. "The applicant provided a copy of your driver's license, your social security card, and even answered security questions about your employment history and previous addresses. The level of information required for the application made it clear this was not a simple case of stolen mail or randomly obtained personal data. Someone with intimate access to my personal information had deliberately impersonated me to obtain credit. Now, we also have video surveillance from the application process," Marcus continued. "The applicant appeared to be a middle-aged male, and he seemed very confident and familiar with all the information he was providing. He told our representative that he was setting up the account for his son, who was traveling frequently for work and needed access to credit while away from home." Harold. My father had walked into a bank, presented himself as acting on my behalf, and convinced trained professionals to open a credit line in my name. The surveillance footage Marcus described would show Harold confidently handling paperwork that established me as responsible for debt I had never incurred. The investigation into that single credit card opened up a nightmare of identity theft that extended far beyond one unauthorized account. A store credit line at Best Buy had been opened using my information with purchases, including a 75-inch television, a premium sound system, and several gaming devices totaling over $4,000. Patricia had forged my signature on paperwork for Derek's motorcycle loan, listing me as a co-signer without my knowledge or consent. The loan documentation showed Derek's income as variable and his employment as self-employed contractor, making me essential for approval as someone with stable employment and good credit. A gym membership for Derek had been established using my name and credit information. Utility accounts for what appeared to be a second residence had been opened with me as the primary account holder. Most disturbing, a small business loan for Derek's fictitious landscaping company had been approved with me as a guarantor despite my complete ignorance of Derek's supposed business ventures. The financial crimes investigator I met with Friday afternoon painted a sobering picture of my legal situation. Detective Lisa Rodriguez had handled family financial fraud cases for 12 years, and she explained the complexities of prosecuting relatives for identity theft. The challenge in cases like yours, Mr. Finn, is that the perpetrators have established a pattern of legitimate financial interaction with you, Detective Rodriguez explained. Your regular payments to your parents, combined with the extensive personal information they possess, creates reasonable doubt about whether you knew and approved of these transactions. The evidence Harold and Patricia could present to defend themselves was substantial. 2 years of bank records showing my voluntary weekly transfers could be interpreted as evidence that I supported their various financial activities on my behalf. Their intimate knowledge of my personal information might appear to result from normal family communication rather than exploitation. Additionally, Detective Rodriguez continued, your parents could claim that you verbally authorized these accounts and transactions as extensions of your ongoing financial support. Without recorded conversations or written documentation of your objections, it becomes a matter of conflicting testimony. The possibility that Harold and Patricia might avoid criminal prosecution for their identity theft was devastating enough, but Detective Rodriguez revealed an even more frightening scenario. In some cases we've handled, the perpetrating family members have actually filed counter-accusations claiming the victim authorized all transactions and is now falsely accusing them to avoid financial responsibility. If your parents choose that strategy, you could face legal challenges, proving your innocence rather than their guilt. The stress of discovering the full scope of the financial fraud began affecting every aspect of my life. My concentration at work suffered as I spent hours daily on phone calls with banks, credit agencies, and law enforcement. Sarah struggled to understand how family members could systematically destroy someone they supposedly loved, and the tension affected our marriage as we disagreed about how aggressively to pursue legal action. Sleep became increasingly difficult as I calculated the potential financial damage. Beyond the unauthorized accounts I had discovered, there might be others I had not yet found. My credit score had already dropped, significantly affecting our ability to refinance our mortgage or make planned purchases for our home. The investigation also revealed that Derek's gambling addiction was far worse than anyone in the family had realized. Online betting accounts linked to the credit cards opened in my name showed thousands of dollars in losses across multiple offshore gambling websites. Derek had been using identity theft to fuel a gambling problem that extended far beyond what Harold and Patricia could support through their manipulation of me. Transaction records showed Derek placing bets on professional sports, college basketball, European soccer, horse racing, and even obscure international competitions. The pattern suggested someone completely out of control, willing to use his brother's identity and financial security to continue gambling despite massive losses. The most disturbing discovery came when I reviewed Derek's bank statements through the fraud investigation. Deposits to his account came not only from Harold and Patricia's transfers of my money, but also from elderly relatives who believed they were helping Derek start legitimate businesses. Derek had been running multiple fraud schemes, simultaneously convincing Aunt Grace to invest in his landscaping business, persuading Uncle Bob to loan him money for equipment purchases, and soliciting funds from cousins for various fabricated opportunities. My parents' manipulation of me was just one component of a larger pattern of family financial abuse, orchestrated by Derek and enabled by Harold and Patricia. As the scope of the criminal activity became clear, I faced a decision that would determine not only my financial future, but also the future of my family relationships. Pursuing criminal charges might send my parents to prison and expose Derek's fraud to the entire extended family. Accepting financial responsibility for their crimes might preserve family relationships while destroying my credit and financial security. The choice became more complicated when I discovered that Harold and Patricia were not merely enablers of Derek's fraud, but had been actively participating in a scheme that threatened my daughter's future in ways I had never imagined. The discovery of the recording device came by accident. Sarah was cleaning behind the entertainment center in our living room when she found the small black device attached to the back panel with strong adhesive tape. The sophisticated equipment was designed to record conversations and transmit them wirelessly to a remote receiver. My attorney David Chen examined the device with the focused attention of someone who had seen similar evidence in other cases. His expression grew increasingly serious as he tested its capabilities and reviewed the recorded conversations stored in its memory. Finn, this device contains over 40 hours of edited recordings featuring conversations between you and various family members, David explained. Someone has carefully spliced together phrases and responses to create fabricated conversations that make you appear unstable, aggressive, and potentially dangerous. The recordings were sophisticated manipulations designed to support a legal strategy I had not anticipated. Phrases like, "I'm done with this," had been combined with "you people" and "don't deserve" to create sentences I had never spoken. Frustrated responses during stressful phone calls had been edited together to suggest patterns of verbal abuse and threatening behavior. David played several examples of the manipulated recordings, and I barely recognized my own voice speaking words I had never said in contexts that had never occurred. The editing was professional quality, suggesting expertise beyond what Harold and Patricia possessed. The good news, David continued, is that this type of recording is illegal under Texas law without the consent of all parties involved. The bad news is that your parents have been building a legal case with professional help, and they're preparing to use this fabricated evidence against you. Through contacts in the legal community, David had learned that Harold and Patricia had consulted with a family law attorney about pursuing grandparents' visitation rights. Their legal strategy involved portraying me sad because saying psychologically unstable and claiming that I was preventing them from maintaining a relationship with Lucy due to mental health issues. The attorney they had consulted was James Morrison, known for aggressive tactics in family court cases involving grandparents' rights. Morrison specialized in cases where he could demonstrate that parents were unfit or that grandparents were being unreasonably denied access to their grandchildren. Morrison's strategy typically involves extensive documentation of the parents' alleged instability, David explained. He builds cases using edited communications, manipulated evidence, and witness testimony designed to convince courts that intervention is necessary for the child's welfare. The manipulated recordings were just one component of a comprehensive legal attack. Harold and Patricia had been documenting my behavior during every interaction, photographing my facial expressions during stressful conversations, and maintaining detailed logs of what they claimed were concerning statements and actions. Derek's ex-girlfriend, Amanda Wilson, had been providing guidance throughout their evidence-gathering process. Amanda worked as a paralegal for a different family law firm and had been coaching Harold and Patricia on building a case that would appear credible to family court judges. The strategy included character assassination designed to isolate me from potential supporters. Amanda had advised them to preemptively contact extended family members with their version of events, ensuring that relatives would be more likely to support grandparents seeking access to their granddaughter than a son they believed had become unstable and controlling. But their overconfidence had created vulnerabilities. The illegal recording device Sarah discovered was evidence of criminal activity that invalidated everything they had recorded. Their consultation with Morrison had been documented in billing records that David obtained through legal channels, proving their intent to manipulate the legal system. Most significantly, Amanda's conscience had begun troubling her as she witnessed the scope of Harold and Patricia's manipulation. Derek's gambling addiction had escalated to the point where he was stealing money from Amanda herself, leading her to question her involvement in his family's schemes. Amanda contacted David directly after Derek attempted to forge her signature on a loan application. Her guilt over participating in the legal manipulation, combined with her anger at Derek's theft, motivated her to provide David with copies of the entire strategy Harold and Patricia had planned. The evidence Amanda provided was devastating to their case. Emails between Amanda and Patricia discussed specific techniques for manipulating recordings and building false narratives. Text messages between Harold and Derek revealed their coordination in gathering information they could use against me in court proceedings. Most damaging was Amanda's revelation that Derek had been telling Lucy disturbing stories during unsupervised visits with Harold and Patricia. Derek had convinced Lucy that her father had anger problems and might become dangerous, planting seeds of doubt about my stability and love for her. The psychological manipulation of Lucy was designed to make her fearful of contradicting Harold and Patricia's version of events if questioned by court officials. Derek had told her that Daddy got angry at Grandma and Grandpa for loving her too much, and that someday she might need to live with them to be safe from my supposed instability. Armed with Amanda's evidence and proof of the illegal recording scheme, David developed a counterattack strategy that would expose the full scope of Harold and Patricia's manipulation while protecting Lucy from further psychological damage. The first step involved presenting evidence to Detective Rodriguez that expanded her investigation beyond simple identity theft to include criminal conspiracy, illegal recording, attempted extortion, and child manipulation. The recording device alone constituted multiple felony violations that could result in significant prison sentences. David also contacted the extended family members who had been manipulated, providing them with documentation that proved Harold and Patricia's deception. Uncle Bob, Aunt Martha, and Jennifer agreed to provide sworn statements describing the financial manipulation they had experienced and the lies they had been told about my character. The most powerful component of our counterattack involved Derek's confession. Faced with evidence of identity theft, illegal gambling, using stolen credit, and manipulation of his own niece, Derek realized that his enablers were about to lose all credibility and legal protection. Amanda's decision to cooperate with law enforcement meant that Derek faced potential prosecution for multiple felonies with a witness who could testify to his pattern of fraud and manipulation. His gambling addiction had spiraled to the point where he owed money to online casinos that were beginning to pressure him for payment using my stolen credit. When David and Detective Rodriguez confronted Derek with the evidence Amanda had provided, he broke down completely. The admission that followed revealed the full scope of the manipulation, while simultaneously destroying Harold and Patricia's legal strategy. Derek's confession would prove that my parents were not victims of my alleged instability, but co-conspirators in a systematic campaign of financial and emotional fraud. The revelation would shift the legal proceedings from their attack on my parental fitness to my pursuit of justice for criminal violations that had threatened my daughter's psychological well-being and my family's financial security. But Derek's confession would also reveal that Harold and Patricia had been manipulated by Derek, just as they had manipulated me, adding complexity to a situation where everyone had been both victim and perpetrator in different ways. The family meeting I organized took place on a Saturday morning at Jennifer's house, neutral territory, where everyone could speak freely without the emotional weight of my parents' home or mine. David attended as my attorney, but his role was to facilitate understanding rather than to prosecute. Detective Rodriguez was present to witness any admissions that might be relevant to the ongoing criminal investigation. Extended family members who had been manipulated were invited to hear the truth, presented with evidence that was clear and compassionate. I did not want to ambush Harold and Patricia, but rather provide them an opportunity to acknowledge their actions and seek genuine reconciliation if they were willing. Uncle Bob arrived carrying a folder containing 2 years of receipts for money he had given Derek for supposed business investments. Aunt Martha brought bank statements showing the monthly transfers she had made to Harold and Patricia for Lucy's benefit. Jennifer had printed email conversations with Patricia documenting the lies about my character and behavior. Harold and Patricia arrived expecting support from the family they had been manipulating. Their confidence faltered when they saw the assembled relatives. The documentation spread across Jennifer's dining room table, and Derek sitting silently in a corner chair with his head in his hands. I began by presenting the evidence calmly and factually. Bank statements showed the pattern of my weekly payments being immediately transferred to Derek. Employment records proved that neither Harold nor Patricia had experienced the financial crisis they described. Social media posts documented the lifestyle my money had funded, while Lucy was told her grandparents were too poor to visit. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, presented without anger or accusation, but with the simple clarity of documented facts. Credit reports showed the unauthorized accounts opened in my name. Police reports detailed the illegal recording device found in my home. Amanda's sworn statement described the legal manipulation Harold and Patricia had planned. But the moment that changed everything came when Derek stood up and confessed. "I did this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I manipulated all of you. I convinced Mom and Dad that Finn was selfish and ungrateful, and I convinced Finn that they were struggling. I used everyone's love against them to feed my gambling addiction." Derek's confession revealed the depth of his manipulation. He had told Harold and Patricia that I complained about them constantly, that I looked down on them for being less educated and successful, and that I only helped them financially to feel superior. He convinced them that I deserved to be taken advantage of because I was arrogant and condescending. Simultaneously, Derek had fed my insecurities about not being loved or appreciated by my parents, suggesting that larger financial contributions would prove my worth and earn their affection. He had orchestrated the entire dynamic that turned family love into a financial exploitation scheme. I told Mom and Dad that Finn bragged about having so much money that our family problems were pocket change to him, Derek continued. I made them feel justified in taking his money because I convinced them he thought we were beneath him anyway. The psychological manipulation had been comprehensive and bilateral. Derek had exploited Harold and Patricia's feelings of inadequacy while exploiting my desperate need for parental approval. He had turned our family's natural dynamics into weapons against each other while positioning himself as the victim caught in the middle. Patricia broke down first the weight of Derek's confession, destroying the narrative she had constructed to justify their actions. "We thought we were protecting Derek from Finn's judgment," she sobbed. "Derek told us that Finn called him lazy and worthless, that Finn wanted him to fail. We were just trying to help our son, who was struggling." Harold's response was quieter, but equally devastating. "I believed Derek when he said you looked down on us, Finn. I thought the money was just guilt payment for being ashamed of your family. Derek said you told people at work that your parents were embarrassing and uneducated." The revelation that Derek had systematically lied to everyone about everyone else's feelings and intentions reframed the entire conflict. Harold and Patricia had been victims of Derek's manipulation, even as they victimized me. I had been manipulated into believing my parents needed my financial support, while they were manipulated into believing I owed them money and respect. Derek's gambling addiction had been the driving force behind all the deception. Online betting records showed losses totaling over $120,000 across 2 years, far exceeding even the money he had extracted from me through our parents. He had been stealing from employers, lying to girlfriends about his income, and manipulating every relationship in his life to fund his addiction. The intervention that followed became a healing process for everyone involved. Derek agreed to enter a residential gambling addiction treatment program, acknowledging that his addiction had destroyed his ability to maintain honest relationships with anyone he loved. Harold and Patricia faced with irrefutable evidence, and Derek's confession finally acknowledged the depth of their betrayal. Patricia's tears were genuine this time, expressing grief not just for her actions, but for the years of family harmony that Derek's manipulation had stolen from all of us. The financial restitution was structured as a recovery plan rather than punishment. Harold and Patricia liquidated the luxury purchases they had made with my money, selling Derek's motorcycle, the expensive outdoor furniture and electronics that my contributions had funded. They downsized their lifestyle and committed to transparent financial rebuilding that would repay their debts to me and the relatives they had defrauded. Derek contributed to the restitution by selling personal items and committing his earnings from a structured employment program to repaying family members he had manipulated. The residential treatment facility he entered included financial counseling and supervised employment designed to rebuild his relationship with money and responsibility. The legal resolution involved dropping criminal charges in exchange for full restitution community service and participation in family counseling. Harold and Patricia completed financial responsibility courses and attended sessions designed to help them recognize and resist manipulation in the future. Most importantly, the extended family relationships that had been damaged by Derek's lies were rebuilt on foundations of truth and transparency. Relatives who had been manipulated into believing negative things about my character witnessed my grace throughout the resolution process and understood that they had been victims of the same systematic deception. Family gatherings resumed with genuine warmth as relatives no longer carried resentment based on fabricated grievances. Aunt Martha's monthly dinners brought everyone together, without the undercurrent of manipulation that Derek had fostered. Uncle Bob's visits to our area included stops at our house, and Lucy finally met cousins who had been wanting to know her for years. Lucy's relationship with her grandparents required the most careful rebuilding. Supervised visits with professional guidance gradually restored trust, while ensuring she was protected from further manipulation. Harold and Patricia learned to be genuine grandparents rather than using her as leverage in adult conflicts. The transformation was gradual but profound. Instead of buying Lucy's affection with expensive gifts purchased using manipulated money, Harold taught her to plant flowers in their garden, using seeds they grew together. Patricia read her books they borrowed from the library where she worked, sharing stories about characters who overcame challenges through honesty and perseverance. Derek's recovery included making amends to Lucy for the psychological manipulation he had subjected her to. With therapeutic supervision, he apologized for telling her frightening stories about her father and helped her understand that adults sometimes make mistakes that hurt people they love. The story concluded 6 months later at Lucy's 7th birthday party. Harold and Patricia arrived carrying a small gift they had purchased with money earned through honest work. Derek, 5 months sober and employed at a local construction company, helped set up decorations, while maintaining the boundaries necessary for his recovery. Extended family members surrounded Lucy with authentic love and attention. Aunt Martha brought homemade cookies using a recipe Lucy had requested. Uncle Bob taught her card games he remembered from his own childhood. Jennifer's children played with Lucy as cousins should, building relationships that had been prevented by years of manipulation. I watched my daughter surrounded by family members who truly cared about her, no longer isolated by lies designed to extract money from people who loved her. The contrast with her previous birthday party, where she wondered why her grandparents didn't come, was profound and healing. The life lesson that emerged from our family's journey was clear and transformative. Genuine love never demands payment or manipulation. People who truly care about you don't exploit your generosity or use your children as weapons in adult conflicts. Financial support should never substitute for emotional honesty, and healthy boundaries protect everyone involved in family relationships. My relationship with Sarah had deepened through weathering the crisis together. We had learned to communicate more openly about family pressures and financial decisions, establishing boundaries that protected our marriage from external manipulation. My career had actually benefited from the stress management skills I developed during the crisis. Learning to handle family manipulation had improved my ability to navigate workplace politics and professional relationships with greater clarity about people's motivations and integrity. Lucy grew up understanding that love is demonstrated through consistency, honesty, and respect, rather than through money or gifts. She learned that families sometimes face difficulties that require forgiveness and rebuilding, but that authentic relationships are worth the effort required to maintain them. The final scene showed Harold teaching Lucy to ride her new bicycle, while Patricia watched from a lawn chair, no longer as entitled creditors, but as humbled grandparents grateful for the opportunity to rebuild authentic relationships. Derek helped Uncle Bob with the barbecue grill, contributing to family life instead of draining it through manipulation and theft. Justice had been served not through revenge but through accountability healing, and the restoration of honest relationships built on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. My family had learned that money could not buy love, but that love freely given and honestly received was worth more than any financial contribution. The transformation was complete when Lucy hugged her grandparents goodbye that evening, secure in relationships based on truth rather than manipulation, surrounded by family members who loved her for herself rather than for what she could provide them. Have you ever experienced family members who used emotional manipulation to take advantage of your generosity? How did you handle the situation when you discovered that people you trusted were systematically lying to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar manipulation. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I hope you found some wisdom or comfort that helps you build stronger, more authentic relationships with the people who matter most in your life.